You are welcome to yet another episode of HN What's Your Say? The #1 listening show, where we discuss real issues with real people like you. We are still featuring R. Kelly. Real name Robert Sylvester Kelly. Also known as the R&B King. Today we need to talk about one of the most disturbing, overlooked and unlawful moves ever made by the federal government in its pursuit of a conviction. This is not speculation, not rumor and definitely not guesswork. This is a matter of law, due process and constitutional protections that were trampled on in the case of Robert Sylvester Kelly, better known to the world as R. Kelly. For months and years, the mainstream narrative has been that R. Kelly was taken down by strong evidence, by powerful witnesses and by a flawless government prosecution. But when we look deeper, when we peel back the layers, we find a shocking truth: the government itself broke the law while trying to lock him up. And this isn't a small technicality. This is the kind of violation that shakes the very foundation of the justice system. Let's start with the facts. While R. Kelly was held at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Chicago, also known as the MCC, federal prosecutors working hand-in-hand with prison staff accessed his restricted prison communications. Let me be clear, we're not talking about normal prison monitoring of calls. We're talking about restricted communications. Protected conversations between R. Kelly and his attorneys, and private communications with his girlfriend Joycelyn Savage. In this great country off hours, attorney-client privilege is sacred. It's one of the oldest, strongest and most universally respected protections in our justice system. Without it, the right to a fair defense means nothing. If a prosecutor or prison staff can secretly listen in, read or exploit conversations between a defendant and his lawyer, then every single case in this country is in jeopardy. And yet that's exactly what happened here. Federal agents and prison staff worked together to pry open R. Kelly's restricted communications. They didn't just stop there. That information somehow made its way out of the prison walls into the hands of YouTube blogger Tasha K. And what happened next was a public smear campaign unlike anything we've ever seen. Private letters, phone calls and sensitive details became viral content. And instead of being used in a courtroom under the rules of evidence, this stolen information was used to poison the public against R. Kelly before his trial even began. Think about that. A man sitting in jail fighting for his life, trying to coordinate his defense with his legal team, only to have the government, the very body meant to uphold the law, break it in order to gain an advantage. That's not justice. That's not due process. That's government misconduct at the highest level. Now let's look closer at the Joycelyn Savage angle. Joycelyn was one of R. Kelly's closest companions. She stood by him publicly even when the storm of false accusations grew. Her private communications with him inside the MCC were supposed to remain private. But those conversations were accessed without authorization. Her letters and messages taken by force became tools for the prosecution. They were not just exposed. They were exploited. And then there's Azriel Clary. For a long time, she too stood by R. Kelly amidst the lies. But something changed. Something shifted. And that shift came at the same time that the government was secretly digging through R. Kelly's prison communications. It's not a coincidence that this illegal intrusion was used to manipulate circumstances in such a way that Azriel eventually turned against him and became a key witness for the prosecution. This is called fruit of the poisonous tree. It's a well-known legal doctrine that if evidence or testimony is obtained through such illegality, then everything that flows from that illegality is tainted. It cannot and should not be used in court. If the government breaks the law to get evidence, that evidence is poisoned. And any conviction that relies on it is invalid. Period. But instead of throwing out the tainted evidence in form of Azriel's testimony, instead of sanctioning the prosecutors, and instead of holding prison staff accountable, the system turned a blind eye. They allowed this unlawful behavior to stand. And in doing so, they didn't just violate R. Kelly's rights. They violated the rights of every American citizen. Because if the government can break the law to get to him, they can break the law to get to anyone. Let's pause and really think about how deep this goes. A private citizen, a blogger with a history of controversial statements, was given access to confidential prison communications. That doesn't happen by accident. That doesn't happen without malicious intent. Someone inside the system working for or with the government had to deliberately leak that information. And why? To damage R. Kelly's reputation. To poison the jury pool and to build a case not with facts but with illegally obtained dirt. The Sixth Amendment guarantees the right to effective assistance of counsel. That right is meaningless if the government can eavesdrop on the very communications between a defendant and his lawyer. Imagine you're facing charges, and every word you speak to your attorney is secretly recorded, analyzed, and handed over to the prosecution. That's not a trial. That's an ambush. The Fifth Amendment guarantees due process. That due process was shredded when the government bypassed legal channels and stole communications to use as a weapon. And the First Amendment, the right to free association and speech, was violated when Joycelyn Savage's personal communications were taken from her and weaponized against R. Kelly. This case is not just about him. It's about whether the government can cross the line, break the rules, and still keep a conviction. If they can, then the Constitution is just a piece of paper-thin words. If they can, then we're no longer living under a system of laws, but under a system where the government decides the outcome by any means necessary. Now let's focus on Azriel Clary. Her eventual decision to testify against R. Kelly has been painted as a moment of empowerment. But was it really empowerment? Or was it the result of a carefully orchestrated manipulation, fueled by information the government should have never had? If Azriel was influenced by details drawn from stolen communications, then her testimony was not free, it was not independent. It was contaminated. And sadly, the jury never got to hear the full story about how that testimony came to be. This is why we have checks and balances. Because when the government overreaches, when it violates the Constitution, and when it breaks the very laws it claims to enforce, justice demands correction. And in this case, correction means acknowledging that R. Kelly's right to a fair trial was destroyed the moment his prison communications were breached. Let me make this clear, you don't have to be a fan of R. Kelly's music. You don't have to agree with his lifestyle. You don't even have to like him as a person. But if you believe in the Constitution, if you believe in due process, if you believe in the rule of law, then you must acknowledge that what the government did here was wrong. And if it's wrong, then the conviction cannot stand. This is not about excusing any behavior. This is about demanding fairness. Because fairness is not optional in a courtroom. It's mandatory. If we allow the government to cheat in one case, we allow them to cheat in all cases. And the next time, it might not be a celebrity. It might be you. It might be me. So when we look at R. Kelly's case, we need to separate the noise from the facts. The fact is the government and the MCC staff accessed his restricted communications. The fact is that information was leaked to a blogger. The fact is that it was used to manipulate a key witness. And the fact is that this violates the bedrock principles of our justice system. And here's the final truth. If the government has to break the law to win, then it never really won at all. That is all we had for you today on HN What's Your Say. To keep updated whenever we post a new video, subscribe to this channel now. Also remember to hit the bell icon and enable notifications. And feel free to share your opinions with us in the comment section below, and let us know if you would like us to publish your views in our next release. We value all our subscribers' opinions.